Thousands of years ago, long before electricity, before the written word, even before the rise of empires, humanity was already engineering marvels that would shape the course of history. The Bronze Age, a time often overshadowed by the glories of Rome or the pyramids of Egypt, was actually a hidden hotbed of innovation, where ancient minds crafted technologies so advanced they still leave archaeologists speechless. Picture this, a world where metalworkers forged weapons stronger than anything before, where craftsmen devised tools that transformed farming forever, where inventors created devices so clever they rival modern gadgets. Yet somehow many of these breakthroughs vanished into obscurity, buried by time, war, or simply the relentless march of progress. Today we're unearthing these lost wonders. Because what if I told you that some of the most revolutionary inventions in human history weren't the wheel, the printing press, or the steam engine, but secrets from an era we've barely scratched the surface of? Imagine a tool so precise it could measure the stars, a weapon so devastating it changed the face of war, or a household device so ingenious it made life easier for thousands of years, only to be forgotten. These aren't myths, they're real, tangible pieces of our past waiting to be rediscovered, and that's exactly what we're doing. This is more than just a list, it's a journey back to a time when human creativity burned brighter than ever. We'll explore how these 30 forgotten inventions didn't just exist. They thrived, reshaping cultures, fueling empires, and even laying the groundwork for the modern world. From the battlefield to the farm, from the workshop to the home, these innovations were the hidden gears turning the Bronze Age forward, and now they're finally stepping back into the light. So, if you've ever wondered what truly made the ancient world tick, buckle up because history is about to get a lot more fascinating. Let's start with a device so sophisticated it shouldn't have existed in its time, the Antikythera Mechanism. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in the early 20th century, this corroded bronze artifact looked like little more than a lump of metal at first glance. But when researchers painstakingly reconstructed its fragments, they realized they were holding something extraordinary, the world's oldest known analog computer. Crafted around 2,100 years ago, this intricate machine wasn't just ahead of its time, it was light years ahead. Picture a handheld device no larger than a shoebox, packed with over 30 interlocking bronze gears, each precisely calibrated to mimic the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. By turning a simple crank, ancient astronomers could predict solar eclipses years in advance, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and even calculate the exact dates of upcoming celestial events. The level of precision is staggering. Some of its gear ratios align with the orbits of celestial bodies with near-perfect accuracy. To put that into perspective, nothing remotely this advanced would appear again until the intricate mechanical clocks of 14th century Europe. That's a gap of over 1,300 years. So why was this marvel forgotten? The answer lies in the fragility of knowledge itself. The Antikythera Mechanism wasn't just a technological leap, it was a rarity, likely built by a small group of brilliant minds in ancient Greece. As wars raged and empires crumbled, the expertise required to recreate it simply vanished. Imagine if the entire internet disappeared tomorrow and centuries from now, someone unearthed a single smartphone. That's the scale of loss we're talking about. What's even more astonishing is how this device challenges our assumptions about ancient ingenuity. We often think of the past as a linear march toward progress, but the Antikythera Mechanism proves that brilliance isn't bound by time. It's a reminder that innovation can flare up, burn brightly, and then fade, waiting centuries to be rediscovered. And that begs the question, how many other game-changing inventions from the Bronze Age are still out there, buried beneath layers of sand and time? While the Antikythera Mechanism revealed the Greeks' staggering astronomical prowess, another Bronze Age artifact, just as mysterious and even older, proves that advanced stargazing wasn't limited to the Mediterranean. Buried in a German forest for over 3,600 years, the Nebra Sky Disk is a breathtaking bronze masterpiece that rewrote history the moment it was unearthed by looters in 1999. At first glance, it looks deceptively simple, a circular plate about the size of a dinner plate, adorned with golden arcs and dots. But this unassuming object is in fact the oldest known portable representation of the cosmos ever discovered. A snapshot of the heavens crafted by hands that lived millennia before telescopes or written star charts. What makes the disk so revolutionary? Its golden inlays aren't random decorations, they're a precise celestial map. The cluster of 7 dots, that's the Pleiades star cluster, a key navigation marker for ancient cultures. The large golden circle, the sun or possibly the full moon flanked by a crescent moon on the opposite side. But the real stroke of genius lies in the 2 golden arcs along the edges, each representing the angle of the sun's movement between summer and winter solstices. When combined with the Pleiades, these features transform the disk into a functional agricultural calendar. Farmers could use it to predict optimal planting and harvest times by aligning it with the horizon, watching as certain stars appeared or disappeared behind the arcs. This wasn't just art, it was a tool that connected the rhythms of the sky to the survival of entire communities. Yet the Nebra Sky Disk's purpose ran deeper than practicality. Found alongside swords and ritual axes, it was clearly a sacred object, likely used by shamans or priest astronomers to bridge the earthly and divine. Imagine a Bronze Age ceremony under a starry sky, the disk held aloft as a physical manifestation of celestial power. Its creators saw the heavens not as distant lights, but as a living, breathing force intertwined with daily life. This blend of science and spirituality is what makes the disk so extraordinary. It captures a moment when humanity first began to systemize the cosmos, not just observe it. But here's the twist: the disk's sophistication suggests it wasn't an isolated invention. Similar symbols appear in later Babylonian and Egyptian astronomy, hinting at a vast, interconnected network of knowledge stretching across Europe and the Near East long before written records. How did these ideas travel? Were there other disks now lost to time? The Nebra Sky Disk is a lone survivor, a whisper of a much larger conversation between ancient cultures about the mysteries above. Its survival forces us to reconsider just how advanced and how interconnected Bronze Age science truly was. And like the Antikythera Mechanism, it stands as a haunting reminder of how easily brilliance can vanish, leaving behind only fragments of a forgotten world's ingenuity. Now, let's turn our attention to an artifact so enigmatic. It's been called the Bronze Age's most tantalizing puzzle, the Phaistos Disc. Unearthed in 1908 in the ruins of the Minoan palace of Phaistos on the island of Crete, this palm-sized clay disc is no ordinary relic. Its surface is covered on both sides with a spiraling series of stamped symbols, 45 distinct characters in total, arranged in groups that seem to tell a story or perhaps convey a message. But here's the catch: over a century after its discovery, no one has definitively cracked its code. What makes the Phaistos Disc so fascinating isn't just its undeciphered script, it's the fact that this isn't hand-carved graffiti or hastily scratched notes. Each symbol was meticulously pressed into the clay using individual stamps, making it the earliest known example of movable type in human history. Think about that for a moment. This technique wouldn't reappear in Europe until Gutenberg's printing press in the 15th century, more than 3,000 years later. So why did this revolutionary method vanish for millennia? Was it a technological dead end, or is there another disc out there, lost to time, that could rewrite the history of communication? Scholars have spent decades debating its purpose. Some believe it's a religious text, a hymn or prayer meant to be read aloud during sacred ceremonies. Others argue it's a form of proto-writing, a stepping stone between pictorial symbols and true alphabets. There's even a compelling theory that it's a board game with the spirals serving as a track for pieces to move along, but the most intriguing possibility, that it's a diplomatic message, a clay letter sent between Bronze Age rulers. Imagine a Minoan courier carrying this disc across the Aegean, its symbols conveying terms of trade or alliance to someone who could read its secrets. Yet the disc's isolation is what truly baffles archaeologists. No other artifact like it has ever been found, no matching stamps, no similar inscriptions, not even a fragment. It's as if this one object fell through a crack in time, leaving us with nothing but questions. Was it the work of a lone genius, a failed experiment in record-keeping? Or is it a surviving piece of a much larger system that crumbled with the Minoan civilization itself? The Phaistos Disc doesn't just defy translation, it challenges our assumptions about how innovation spreads. Here was a culture advanced enough to conceptualize reusable type, yet the idea seemingly died with them. It's a haunting reminder that progress isn't inevitable, and that even the brightest ideas can flicker out if the world isn't ready to embrace them. So while we may never know what the disc's symbols truly mean, their very existence speaks volumes about the untapped ingenuity of the Bronze Age, a time when humanity was experimenting with the future, one stamped symbol at a time. Moving from the mysteries of ancient scripts to the puzzles of forgotten science, we encounter an artifact that could rewrite the history of electricity itself, the Baghdad Battery. Discovered in 1936 just outside modern-day Iraq, this unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a grapefruit, holds a secret that has sparked debate for decades. Inside, archaeologists found a copper cylinder wrapped around an iron rod, sealed with an asphalt plug, a combination that bears an uncanny resemblance to a primitive galvanic cell. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, the jar could theoretically produce a small electrical charge, enough to generate a faint current. The implications are staggering. If this was indeed an ancient battery, it predates Alessandro Volta's invention of the modern battery by nearly 2,000 years. But what would the Parthians, who crafted this object around 2,000 years ago, have used it for? One compelling theory suggests electroplating, the process of coating one metal with another using electricity. Artifacts from the same era show intricate gold-plated objects that seem too precise for traditional methods. Could the Baghdad Battery have been part of a workshop, humming with activity as artisans used its current to gild jewelry or embellish sacred relics? Yet skepticism lingers. Critics argue the design is too simple to be intentional, pointing out that no wires or connectors were found nearby. Some propose it was merely a storage vessel for sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper acting as protective elements. Others wonder if its true purpose was medicinal. Ancient texts describe using electric fish to numb pain, so perhaps this device delivered controlled shocks for healing. The most tantalizing possibility, that it was neither mistake nor miracle, but a fragment of a larger technological tradition now lost. Imagine a world where knowledge of electricity flickered in and out of history, never quite catching hold until the modern era. The Baghdad Battery, whether a functional device or a curious accident, forces us to question the linear narrative of scientific progress. It's a whisper from the past, daring us to reconsider just how much the ancients truly understood and how much we've yet to rediscover. We often think of modern plumbing as a relatively recent luxury, but buried beneath the ruins of a Bronze Age palace lies evidence that challenges that assumption. In the labyrinthine corridors of Knossos, Crete, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary, a flush toilet dating back over 3,600 years. This wasn't some primitive pit or makeshift latrine. The Minoans had engineered a sophisticated drainage system that used gravity and terracotta pipes to whisk wastewater away with an elegance that wouldn't be matched for centuries. The design was shockingly advanced, a wooden seat perched over a hollow channel, where water from an overhead reservoir would rush through at regular intervals, carrying waste into a centralized sewer system beneath the palace. These weren't isolated installations either. Knossos boasted an entire network of interconnected toilets, bathtubs, and even storm drains, all meticulously crafted from clay and stone. What's truly remarkable is how the system anticipated problems we still grapple with today. The pipes were tapered to prevent clogs, and the sewers featured sedimentation tanks to filter solids before water flowed out to the surrounding fields. This wasn't just convenience, it was public health engineering on a scale the world wouldn't see again until the height of the Roman Empire. Speaking of Rome, while the Romans are often credited with pioneering sanitation, their famous aqueducts and communal latrines appeared nearly 2 millennia after Knossos. Even then, Roman plumbing lacked some of the Minoan's ingenuity. Take the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's monumental sewer. While impressive, it relied on enslaved laborers to manually clear blockages, whereas the Minoan system's self-cleaning design minimized maintenance. And while Roman elites enjoyed private toilets, they were still basic holes emptying into cesspits, not the flowing water marvels of Knossos. Why did this technology vanish? The answer lies in catastrophe. When the volcanic island of Thera erupted around 1600 BC, tsunamis and ash clouds crippled Minoan civilization. Surviving societies prioritized raw survival over luxurious plumbing, and the knowledge faded into myth. For centuries afterward, medieval Europeans would toss waste into streets, unaware that their Bronze Age ancestors had solved the problem millennia prior. The Minoan toilet isn't just a quirky relic, it's a testament to how quickly progress can unravel. It makes you wonder what other revolutionary ideas have been lost to time, waiting beneath our feet to be rediscovered. Beneath the turquoise waters off the coast of Turkey lies a time capsule so rich, it rewrote our understanding of Bronze Age globalization, the Uluburun shipwreck. Discovered by a sponge diver in 1982, this 3,000-year-old vessel wasn't just carrying cargo, it was hauling the DNA of an entire interconnected world. Picture a floating marketplace, its hull packed with 10 tons of raw materials and luxury goods from at least 7 different civilizations. Copper ingots from Cyprus, ebony from Nubia, Baltic amber, Mesopotamian seals, Egyptian gold, and even tin from as far away as Afghanistan, all piled together in a single ship. This wasn't just trade, it was a Bronze Age superhighway of resources, proving that the Mediterranean was buzzing with commerce long before the rise of Rome or Athens. The real showstopper, the ship's stash of cobalt blue glass ingots. These weren't mere trinkets, they were the silicon chips of their day, a high-tech commodity traded by the elite. Analysis revealed the glass came from Mesopotamia, where artisans had mastered the art of coloring it with cobalt oxide, a technique so advanced it wouldn't be replicated in Europe for another millennium. These ingots weren't just shipped as finished products, they were raw material for local workshops, melted down and reshaped into beads, vessels, or ceremonial objects tailored to regional tastes. It's a snapshot of supply chain sophistication, materials sourced from one corner of the world, transformed in another, and consumed in yet another. But the Uluburun's most telling cargo might be the least glamorous: tin. This unassuming metal, stacked in hundreds of dull grey bars, was the lifeblood of Bronze Age economies. Mixed with copper, it forged the alloy that gave the era its name, bronze. What's astonishing isn't just the volume found aboard enough to outfit an army, but its origin. Isotopic testing traced it to mines in Afghanistan, meaning this tin had already traveled 2,000 miles over mountains and deserts before ever reaching the ship. That journey reveals a startling truth. By 1400 BC, trade networks stretched from the Baltic to the Indus Valley, with middlemen passing goods hand to hand across continents. The ship's eclectic inventory reads like a Bronze Age Amazon wishlist. Ivory tusks from Syrian elephants, a species already going extinct. Jars of terebinth resin, the ancient world's superglue. A gold scarab inscribed with the name of Nefertiti, suggesting diplomatic gifts between pharaohs and foreign rulers. Even a collection of Baltic amber beads, their journey from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean hinting at hidden northern trade routes. Each object whispers secrets about the people who handled them. The Cypriot merchant who bartered for Mycenaean pottery, the Egyptian official who sealed deals with scarabs, the Aegean artisan who eagerly awaited those glass ingots. What sank the Uluburun remains a mystery, perhaps a storm or an overloaded hull, but its loss is our gain. The wreck forces us to rethink the Bronze Age as anything but primitive. This was an era of tariff negotiations, quality control, and just-in-time delivery, where a broken axle in Anatolia could delay a weapons shipment to Egypt. These weren't isolated kingdoms, they were nodes in a web of interdependence so tight. Its collapse around 1200 BC plunged the Mediterranean into a dark age. The Uluburun's cargo is more than artifacts, it's a warning about how fragile global systems can be, and a testament to humanity's timeless drive to connect, trade, and innovate against all odds. The Hittites didn't just ride into battle, they thundered across the ancient world on wheels so advanced they turned warfare into an art form. Unlike the clunky, solid-wheeled carts of their rivals, the Hittite chariot was a masterpiece of Bronze Age engineering, built for speed, agility, and sheer terror. At its heart was a breakthrough that changed combat forever: the spoked wheel. Imagine a wooden rim wrapped around a sunburst of carefully carved spokes, each one reducing weight while maintaining strength. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a revolution on par with swapping out a tank for a sports car. A single Hittite chariot could carry 3 soldiers at breathtaking speeds, their wheels slicing through mud and sand that would bog down heavier design. But the genius didn't stop there. Every component was optimized for dominance. The chariot's lightweight frame, often reinforced with bronze fittings, could pivot on a dime, allowing drivers to outmaneuver slower opponents. The axle placement perfectly balanced to prevent tipping during sharp turns. Even the horses were part of the innovation. Bred for power and stamina, their harnesses designed to distribute weight evenly. This wasn't just transportation, it was a precision instrument of war capable of covering 50 miles in a single day. To opposing armies, the sight of a Hittite chariot corps on the horizon meant one thing: annihilation was coming faster than they could run. The tactical advantages were devastating. While most armies relied on infantry slogging it out shield to shield, the Hittites turned battles into mobile killing fields. Archers could loose arrows from a stable platform even at full gallop, while spear-wielding warriors used the chariot's momentum to deliver crushing blows. Historical accounts describe their chariots as a storm of blades and wheels, striking enemy formations like lightning before fading back into the dust. At the Battle of Kadesh in 1284 BCE, the Hittite king Muwatalli II deployed nearly 3,000 of these machines against the Egyptians, the largest chariot clash in recorded history. Though the battle ended in a stalemate, the psychological impact was clear. No kingdom could challenge the Hittites without matching their chariot technology. Yet what's truly astonishing is how this marvel vanished. When the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, their chariot designs, like so many Bronze Age innovations, were lost in the chaos. Later civilizations, including the Assyrians, would revive chariot warfare, but none matched the Hittites' lethal combination of speed and craftsmanship. It's a stark reminder that even the most cutting-edge technology can disappear overnight when the hands that built it are gone. Today, archaeologists still debate how the Hittites perfected their designs, were the spokes carved from a single piece of wood or painstakingly joined. How did they achieve such precise balance without modern tools? The answers may lie buried in the ruins of Hattusa, waiting to reveal the full story of history's first superweapon on wheels. Buried in the ashes of long-collapsed palaces across Greece, The Mycenaean Linear B tablets are time capsules of an administrative system so meticulous it rivals modern spreadsheets. Unlike the cryptic symbols of the Phaistos Disc, these clay tablets weren't meant to be poetic or mysterious. They were the Bronze Age equivalent of office paperwork, etched with the dry but vital details of inventory lists, tax records, and workforce allocations. Yet this very mundanity is what makes them priceless. When archaeologist Michael Ventris cracked their code in 1952, he didn't just decipher an ancient script. He pulled back the curtain on Europe's first known bureaucracy, revealing a civilization obsessed with order down to the last jar of olive oil. Take one typical tablet from the Palace of Pylos cataloging chariot parts. 2 pairs of wheels bound with bronze, 1 set of reins missing. Another from Knossos inventories textiles with startling specificity. 47 bolts of linen, 10 dyed purple, stored in the West Wing. These weren't idle notes, they were the backbone of an empire. The Mycenaeans tracked everything from the number of sheep in distant pastures to the rations given to bronze smiths working on the palace walls. What emerges is a portrait of a society run with clipboard-wielding precision, where scribes in sunlit courtyards tallied goods flowing in from across the Aegean. But here's what's truly groundbreaking. Linear B isn't just Greek, it's the oldest known form of the language, predating Homer by at least 500 years. Those squiggly symbols, they're syllables, not letters, each representing sounds like tie-rai, po, tripod, or ko-wo, boy. This revelation rewrote history, proving Greek wasn't a latecomer to the Mediterranean but had roots stretching deep into the Bronze Age. Suddenly, names like Hector and Achilles weren't just legends, they were real Mycenaean names preserved in payroll records. Yet for all their practicality, the tablets hold haunting gaps. They record quantities and transactions but whisper little about the people behind them. We know how much wool a slave woman named Athausa wove, but not her thoughts as she worked. We see lists of guest gifts sent to foreign kings, but not the diplomacy behind them. It's like finding an ancient Excel file without the emails that explained it, a system so efficient it forgot to preserve its own stories. And then around 1200 BCE, the scribes stopped writing. The palaces burned, the tablets baked hard in the fires that destroyed them, and Linear B vanished for 3,000 years. That's the irony. These meticulous records, meant to ensure continuity, became fragments of a world that collapsed overnight. Today, they're more than administrative relics. They're proof that even the most mundane paperwork can outlast empires, waiting patiently in the dirt to tell us how the ancient world really worked. Tucked away in the ruins of ancient Cypriot ports, archaeologists uncovered objects no larger than a thumb, yet their intricate carvings tell a story far grander than their size suggests. These were cylinder seals, meticulously crafted from semi-precious stones like hematite and lapis lazuli, each one a rolling signature for the bustling merchants of the Bronze Age. Picture a trader pressing one of these tiny cylinders into wet clay, leaving behind a continuous band of images: lions chasing bulls, gods bestowing blessings, ships heavy with cargo. More than just decorative, these seals were the Iron Age equivalent of notarized documents, turning lumps of clay into binding contracts, inventory records, and even personal identifiers. What makes Cypriot seals extraordinary isn't just their artistry, it's the cultural cocktail they represent. Unlike the rigidly formal designs of Mesopotamian seals, Cypriot carvers blended Egyptian scarabs, Aegean spirals, and Near Eastern mythological scenes into something entirely unique. A single seal might feature a Hittite storm god standing beside a Minoan-style griffin, framed by Egyptian Ankh symbols. This wasn't cultural theft. It was a deliberate melting pot, reflecting Cyprus's role as the grand central station of Bronze Age trade. Merchants from a dozen civilizations passed through its harbors, and these seals became a visual lingua franca, communicating trust across language barriers. But the real magic lies in how they worked. Unlike stamp seals that left a single impression, cylinder seals could create an endless repeating pattern when rolled, a primitive form of copy-paste. Imagine a customs officer unrolling a clay tablet along a shipment of copper ingots, the seal's design repeating like a barcode to certify purity and origin. Some seals even had hidden security features, microscopic flaws intentionally carved into the stone, making forgery nearly impossible. Traders from Syria to Sardinia recognized these marks as guarantees, turning Cyprus's ports into the world's first free trade zones. Yet these seals revealed darker truths too. Archaeologists found clusters of them in administrative quarters, often near cuneiform tablets detailing taxes and tariffs. One particularly telling seal shows a merchant kneeling before a scribe, goods piled between them, a snapshot of commerce under the watchful eye of the state. Others bear the names of specific officials, like a Bronze Age version of signing off on a customs form. Here was a society where trade wasn't just casual exchange, it was the lifeblood of the economy, regulated down to the last amphora of olive oil. The tragedy, most of these seals ended up in garbage heaps. As the Bronze Age collapsed, Cyprus's ports emptied and the complex web of trade unraveled. The seals, once symbols of connection, became obsolete almost overnight. Today, they're more than curiosities, they're miniature time machines, letting us peer into an era when a tiny island held the Mediterranean's economy in the palm of its hand, one rolled impression at a time. Deep in the rugged mountains of western Iran, where the Zagros ranges stretch like a sleeping giant, bronzesmiths of the ancient Luristan culture were crafting objects that defy time and categorization. The Luristan bronzes, primarily dating between 1000 and 600 BCE, aren't just artifacts. They're a visual language cast in metal, where rearing ibexes twist into chariot fittings, where goddesses with serpents coiled around their arms stand guard over lost rituals, and where the boundaries between animal, human, and divine blur into something utterly mesmerizing. Unlike the rigid formalism of Mesopotamian or Egyptian art, these figurines pulse with raw energy, as if the metal itself were alive. Take the iconic Master of Animals motif, a recurring theme in Luristan metalwork. These intricate pieces depict a central figure, often with exaggerated, almost geometric limbs, gripping two beasts by their throats. At first glance, they might resemble trophies of a hunt. But look closer, the master isn't subduing the animals, they're locked in symbiotic tension, a dance of equals. Some scholars argue these represent a shaman mediating between worlds, while others see echoes of ancient Indo-Iranian deities like Mithra or Anahita. The truth, these bronzes were likely spiritual conduits, used in rituals where the line between hunter and hunted, worshipper and worshipped, dissolved entirely. The animal figurines are even more enigmatic. Stags with crescent-shaped antlers that double as lunar symbols, bulls with bodies elongated into abstract curves, birds of prey fused with human faces. Each one feels like a piece of a forgotten cosmology. What's striking is how their creators manipulated bronze not just as a medium, but as a narrative tool. A horse's mane might explode into spiral patterns symbolizing motion or divine energy, while a goat's horns stretch impossibly skyward, mimicking sacred trees. This wasn't mere decoration, it was mythology rendered in 3 dimensions. But here's the twist, many of these bronzes weren't made for display. Excavations reveal they adorned functional objects, horse bits, axe heads, even pins for fastening cloaks. Imagine a warrior riding into battle with a bronze ibex figurine as his chariot's rein guide, or a priestess wearing a serpent goddess brooch during ceremonies. The sacred and the everyday weren't separate realms to the Lurs, they were intertwined with spiritual power woven into the fabric of daily life. Yet for all their brilliance, Luristan bronzes almost vanished from history. Plundered by tomb raiders in the early 20th century, thousands flooded the black market without archaeological context, leaving scholars to piece together their meaning like a puzzle missing half its pieces. Only a handful were excavated properly, from graves where they lay beside their owners, a chieftain with a bronze standard between his hands, a child buried with a tiny horse figurine clutched to their chest. These rare intact finds hint at a culture that saw death not as an end, but as a journey where bronze talismans offered protection in the afterlife. Today, the Luristan bronzes challenge our assumptions about primitive art. Their abstract forms feel startlingly modern. Picasso collected them, and their influence whispers in his distorted figures. But more than that, they're a reminder that some of history's most profound ideas weren't written in clay or stone, but cast in metal, waiting to be pulled from the earth, still glowing with the fire of their makers' imaginations. Rising like stone sentinels from the rugged landscape of Sardinia, the Nuraghi Towers stand as one of the Bronze Age's most baffling architectural achievements. Over 7,000 of these conical structures dot the island, some towering as high as 3-story buildings, their dry stone walls fitted together with such precision that not a sliver of mortar was needed to hold them in place for over 3,000 years. But what's truly staggering isn't just their endurance, it's the mystery of their purpose. Were they impregnable fortresses, elite residences, or something far more celestial? Look closely at a Nuragh's design, and you'll spot clues that hint at a multifaceted genius. The walls, sometimes 5 meters thick, curve inward as they rise, creating a honeycomb effect that distributes weight flawlessly, a technique so advanced it wouldn't be rivaled until the Renaissance. Narrow staircases spiral upward between double-layered stone barriers, a defensive masterstroke forcing attackers into single-file vulnerability. Yet inside, the space feels oddly sacred. Corbelled ceilings form perfect domes, echoing the architecture of Mycenaean Tholos tombs, while small niches line the interior walls, possibly holding ritual offerings or sacred fires. This duality, part fortress, part temple, suggests the Nuraghi were more than just stone piles. They were the beating hearts of Sardinian society, but the plot thickens when you notice their alignment. Many Nuraghi cluster in lines stretching dozens of kilometers, positioned so that signals could pass between them using mirrors or fire, an ancient communication network long before the Roman road system. Even more intriguing, at certain towers like the legendary Nuragh Santu Antony, specific windows and openings frame solstice sunrises or key stars like Sirius. Was this accidental or proof that the builders wove astronomy into their architecture? Theories about their creators, the Nuraghic civilization, only deepen the enigma. Unlike their contemporary Egyptians or Mesopotamians, the Nuraghic people left no deciphered writings, just these silent stone giants. Some scholars argue the towers were status symbols for local chieftains, their height reflecting power. Others point to wells found in many structures, suggesting they were communal gathering spots tied to water worship. Then there's the haunting possibility that they served as cosmic calendars, their alignments tracking seasons for agriculture or religious festivals. What's undeniable is their legacy. When the Romans invaded Sardinia in the 3rd century BCE, they repurposed many Nuraghi as military outposts, proof of their enduring strategic value. Yet the original builders' knowledge had already faded, their techniques lost to time. Today, the towers remain Sardinia's stone riddles, challenging us to reconsider what Bronze Age societies were capable of when they looked to the land and the stars for inspiration. In the heart of China's Shang dynasty, where kings ruled as intermediaries between heaven and earth, bronze wasn't just a metal, it was the sacred language of power, etched into vessels so exquisite they blurred the line between art and altar. These weren't mere containers for food or wine. They were portals to the spirit world, crafted with such precision that modern metallurgists still marvel at their flawless seams. Picture a ritual where the air thickens with incense as a priest pours millet wine into a towering Zun vessel, its surface alive with roaring dragons and spiraling thunder patterns. Every curve, every motif whispered to the ancestors we remember. What sets these bronzes apart isn't just their beauty, but the sheer technical audacity behind them. Shang artisans pioneered a method called piece mold casting, light years ahead of simpler techniques used elsewhere. Instead of carving wax models like the lost wax method, they sculpted intricate designs directly into clay molds, section by section, then assembled them like a 3D puzzle before pouring molten bronze. The result, vessels with razor-sharp detail like the infamous Simuwu Ding, a square cauldron weighing nearly 900 kilograms, a feat requiring synchronized labor from hundreds of workers, perfect temperature control, and a logistics network to transport ores from distant mines. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was state-sponsored alchemy. The iconography hidden in their designs reads like a coded cosmology. Tauti masks, those hypnotic, symmetrical faces with hollow eyes, dominate many vessels, possibly representing ancestral spirits or nature deities. Some scholars argue their gaps symbolize the boundary between worlds. Others see them as early totems of political authority. Then there's the recurring dragon motif, coiled around handles or slithering along rims, embodying imperial power and control over water, a vital metaphor for an agrarian society. Even the vessel shapes held meaning. Dew goblets with spouts like birds' beaks for libations, gu cups narrowing at the waist to aerate wine during rituals, each form choreographed for ceremonial precision. But the true genius of these bronzes lies in their dual purpose. While they served as ritual objects, their inscriptions reveal a darker pragmatism. They were also propaganda. Many bear dedications like, "For the glorious ancestor Ding." This vessel commemorates his victory over the Qiang, transforming spiritual tools into records of military conquest. The Shang kings understood that ancestor worship wasn't just about reverence. It was a tool to legitimize their rule, linking past triumphs to present authority. The more elaborate the vessel, the louder the message. Our lineage is blessed, our power divine. Yet by the dynasty's fall around 1046 BCE, the secrets of these bronzes began fading. Later Zhou rulers adopted simpler designs, and the Taoti's hypnotic gaze gave way to abstract patterns. Today, the Shang bronzes stand as silent witnesses to a paradox. Objects meant to eternalize memory were themselves nearly forgotten, buried in tombs until archaeologists unearthed them millennia later. When you stare into the hollow eyes of a Taoti, you're not just seeing art, you're glimpsing a civilization's heartbeat, frozen in bronze, still echoing across 3,000 years. The difference between a Mycenaean warrior charging into battle and his Minoan counterpart wasn't just about fighting style, it was etched into the very metal of their blades. While the Minoans favored sleek, leaf-shaped swords designed for precise thrusts, the Mycenaeans wielded longer, heavier weapons built for brutal, sweeping cuts. These weren't just personal preferences, they were reflections of two civilizations with wildly different approaches to war, metallurgy, and even the symbolism of violence itself. Take the iconic Minoan Type A sword, a masterpiece of Bronze Age engineering. With its narrow, tapering blade and reinforced midrib, it was the precision scalpel of ancient warfare. Archaeological finds from Knossos show these weapons rarely exceeded 20 inches, short enough for close-quarters combat in palace corridors or shipboard skirmishes. The design prioritized control over raw power, allowing warriors to exploit gaps in an opponent's armor with lethal jabs. Metallurgical analysis reveals another clever touch. Many Minoan swords had slightly softer edges compared to their hardened cores, a technique that prevented brittleness while maintaining deadly sharpness. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was physics in action, balancing flexibility with killing potential. Now contrast that with the Mycenaean Type D sword, a beast of a weapon stretching over 3 feet in length. These weren't tools for subtlety, they were battlefield scythes, their broad blades optimized for cleaving through shields and limbs alike. The secret lay in their distribution of weight. Unlike the Minoans' balanced thrusting swords, Mycenaean blades had mass concentrated toward the tip, turning each swing into a bone-crushing arc. Surviving examples from Grave Circle at Mycenae show advanced alloys with higher tin content, making them harder but more prone to shattering, a trade-off these warriors gladly accepted for sheer destructive force. But the true innovation wasn't just in the blades, it was in the hilts. Minoan swords often featured organic curves that flowed seamlessly from grip to blade, sometimes inlaid with ivory or precious stones. These were personal possessions, as much status symbols as weapons. Mycenaean hilts, however, told a darker story. Many were cast in one piece with the blade, then wrapped in leather for a vice-like grip, a design born from grim practicality. When excavated, some still bear the imprint of their owner's fingers, pressed into the metal during desperate last stands. The swords also reveal a cultural schism. Minoan art frequently shows acrobats leaping over blades in ritual games, suggesting a society where weapons held ceremonial significance. Mycenaean frescoes, meanwhile, depict warriors hewing enemies apart in chaotic melees. This divergence speaks volumes. One civilization saw the sword as a refined instrument, the other as an engine of conquest. Yet by the 12th century BCE, both styles vanished, not because they were inferior, but because the world changed. When the mysterious sea peoples ravaged the Mediterranean, armor improved, and these beautiful bronze blades met their match in new iron weapons. Today, they're more than museum pieces. They're metal fingerprints of two lost worlds, one that danced with blades and one that ruled with them. While we often associate glass with modern skyscrapers or smartphone screens, its origins trace back to the fiery furnaces of ancient Mesopotamia, where artisans pioneered techniques so sophisticated, their secrets would remain unmatched for centuries. Around 4,000 years ago, in the bustling workshops of cities like Ur and Babylon, craftsmen weren't just making crude beads. They were engineering vibrant glass vessels with swirling colors and intricate patterns, using methods that still baffle modern glassblowers. The most revolutionary of these, core-forming a process so meticulous it bordered on alchemy. Picture this: a craftsman molds a clay core into the shape of the vessel's interior, then dips it into molten glass like a candle maker coating a wick. But here's where the magic happens. As the glass cools slightly, the artisan rolls it across a table studded with colored glass rods, embedding stripes or zigzags into the surface. Next, they might drag a pointed tool through the soft glass to create feathery waves, mimicking natural stone like agate or lapis lazuli, a deliberate illusion to make their work more precious. Once decorated, the piece is reheated until the glass fuses seamlessly, and finally, the clay core is scraped out, leaving behind a hollow masterpiece. The result: delicate perfume bottles, slender unguent jars, and drinking cups that shimmered like captured sunlight, their walls often no thicker than an eggshell. But the Mesopotamians didn't stop there. Their mosaic glass technique pushed creativity even further. Artisans would slice pre-made glass rods into cross-sections, revealing intricate patterns like flowers or stars, then arrange these tiny tiles in a mold and heat them until they fused into a single sheet. This wasn't just decoration, it was proto-pixel art, predating modern stained glass by millennia. Some of the most famous examples, like the ornate Lyre of Ur ornaments, feature geometric patterns so precise they suggest the use of magnifying lenses, though none have been found. What's truly staggering is the chemistry behind these creations. Mesopotamian glassmakers mastered the use of metal oxides to produce specific hues: cobalt for deep blue, copper for ruby red, manganese for amethyst purple. They even manipulated opacity by adding tin or lead, creating milky white glass to imitate pearls. Recipes etched on cuneiform tablets reveal formulas like 1 part sand to 2 parts alkali, but also guarded secrets. Some vessels contain trace elements modern scientists still can't replicate, hinting at lost techniques or rare mineral sources. Yet for all their brilliance, these innovations flickered out. As empires rose and fell, glassmaking knowledge fragmented, and the Romans later reinvented many techniques from scratch. Today, surviving Mesopotamian glass is vanishingly rare. Most was buried in royal tombs or shattered by time. But in those shimmering fragments, we catch glimpses of a world where glass wasn't just a material, but a canvas for the impossible. Every swirl of color, every paper-thin edge whispers the same tantalizing question. How much more did they know that we've yet to rediscover? Among the sun-baked ruins of Gujarat, India, lies a structure so ahead of its time, it rewrites everything we thought we knew about Bronze Age seafaring. The Harappan dockyard at Lothal. Built around 4,000 years ago, this massive brick-lined basin wasn't just a place to moor boats. It was a feat of hydraulic engineering that rivaled the ports of ancient Rome 2 millennia later. Picture a rectangular harbor stretching over 200 feet long, its walls reinforced with kiln-fired bricks so precisely fitted they could withstand monsoon floods without mortar. But the real genius lay in what you couldn't see: a carefully calculated channel linking the dock to the nearby Sabarmati River, equipped with a locking gate system to control water flow based on tidal patterns. This wasn't just a dock, it was a Bronze Age Panama Canal, proof that the Harappans didn't just sail, they mastered the sea. What's staggering is how they harnessed nature. Unlike later ports that fought against tides, the Harappans worked with them. The dock's designers positioned the entrance at an angle to exploit seasonal currents, ensuring ships could enter and exit with minimal effort. During high tide, the lock gates opened, allowing the basin to fill deep enough for large vessels. When the tide receded, the gates closed, trapping water inside so ships wouldn't be stranded. Archaeologists found remnants of wooden posts along the channel, likely part of a pulley system to guide boats, a primitive but effective precursor to modern docking tech. And here's the kicker: sediment studies suggest the dock remained functional for nearly 500 years, surviving floods that would have shattered lesser designs. But Lothal wasn't just about engineering. It was the epicenter of a trade network stretching from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley. Excavations revealed stacks of Mesopotamian cylinder seals, Persian Gulf pearls, and even fragments of African ebony, all clustered near the dockyard. One warehouse contained over 60 terracotta ingots, each shaped like those found in Oman, suggesting a standardized system for shipping copper. The Harappans didn't just build ships, they built an entire maritime economy, complete with customs officers stamping cargo and scribes tallying goods on clay tablets. Yet the most haunting discovery was a series of stone anchors, some weighing over 100 pounds, far heavier than needed for local rivers. These were deep-sea anchors, hinting at voyages across the Arabian Sea. Coupled with cuneiform records from mentioning Meluha, ships likely Harappan vessels, it's clear Lothal was a gateway between continents. But how did a civilization with no known maps navigate such distances? The answer might lie in the stars. A curious platform near the dock aligns with certain constellations, suggesting celestial navigation. Imagine Harappan sailors plotting courses by the heavens, their cargo holds brimming with lapis lazuli and cotton, while back home, engineers tweaked the dock's gates to the rhythm of the moon. Then around 1900 BCE, it all stopped. The dock silted up, the warehouses emptied, and the knowledge behind this maritime marvel faded. Unlike the slow decline of Rome, Lothal's end was abrupt, possibly due to tectonic shifts altering river courses or a sudden climate shift. Today, the ruins whisper a tantalizing question. If this was just one dock, how vast was the Harappans' lost nautical empire? Every brick, every anchor is a clue to a Bronze Age world more connected and more brilliant than we ever imagined. The Egyptian composite bow wasn't just a weapon, it was a revolution strung with sinew and wood, a masterpiece of ancient engineering that turned the tide of battles across the Near East. Unlike the simple self-bows used by earlier civilizations, made from a single piece of wood, this was a layered marvel, combining horn, wood, and animal tendon into a single devastating arc. Picture a bow that could launch an arrow with enough force to pierce armor at 200 yards, yet compact enough for a charioteer to wield at full gallop. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was the Bronze Age equivalent of swapping a musket for a sniper rifle. What made it so lethal? The secret lay in its construction. Horn on the belly, the side facing the archer compressed under tension, storing energy like a coiled spring. Wood formed the core, giving the bow its shape, while dried animal tendon glued to the back. The side facing the target provided elasticity, snapping back with terrifying speed. When drawn, these materials worked in harmony, each layer amplifying the other's power. The result, a bow that could deliver arrows with nearly twice the velocity and range of its all-wood counterparts. But the real stroke of genius was its adaptability. Egyptian artisans tailored these bows to their environment. In the dry heat of the Nile Valley, they used acacia wood and gazelle horn, materials resistant to warping. Archers serving in the humid Levant might find bows reinforced with hippopotamus tendon, less prone to moisture damage. Each bow was a bespoke instrument, taking months to cure and assemble, a far cry from the mass-produced weapons of later eras. The tactical advantages were undeniable. Pharaohs like Thutmose III fielded entire divisions of composite bow archers, their arrows raining down on enemies before opposing forces could even close the gap. At the Battle of Megiddo in 1457 BCE, Egyptian archers decimated Canaanite chariots from a distance, their superior range turning the battlefield into a killing field. Unlike the slow reload of slings or javelins, a skilled archer could loose a dozen arrows a minute, creating what one ancient text called a storm of feathers and bronze. Yet this technological leap nearly vanished. As bronze gave way to iron, the composite bow's intricate craftsmanship fell out of favor, replaced by simpler designs. Only the Hittites and Assyrians preserved fragments of the knowledge, adapting it into their own feared archery core. Today, surviving examples are vanishingly rare. The organic materials decayed long ago, leaving only fragments of gold leaf or ivory inlays from royal tombs. In the end, the composite bow wasn't just a tool of war. It was a testament to how far ancient engineers would go to harness nature's raw materials, bending them to human will. And for a few brilliant centuries, it made Egypt's armies unstoppable. High on the walls of the ancient palace of Knossos, frozen in midair for over 3,500 years, a young athlete somersaults over the back of a charging bull, his body arched in perfect defiance of gravity, his fingers grazing the beast's glistening hide. This is the bull leaping fresco, one of the most electrifying artworks to survive from the Bronze Age, and far more than just decoration. Every swirl of ochre and cerulean blue whispers secrets about a civilization that turned danger into devotion, merging sport, art, and spirituality in ways we're still struggling to fully comprehend. What makes these frescoes so extraordinary isn't just their artistic brilliance, it's the visceral energy they capture. Unlike the stiff, formal poses of Egyptian tomb paintings, Minoan art bursts with motion. In one famous panel from Knossos, three figures work in harmony. A pale-skinned woman grasps the bull's horns, a dark-skinned man flips over its back, and another woman waits to catch him mid-flight. The bull itself is a study in controlled chaos, muscles coiled, eyes wide with fury, yet its body forms a perfect arc that mirrors the acrobat's own curve. This isn't just a snapshot of a stunt, it's a choreographed dance with death, painted with such anatomical precision that modern bullfighters still debate whether these maneuvers were even possible. But here's the twist, these weren't mere spectator sports. Bull leaping was likely a sacred rite woven into the fabric of Minoan religion. The vivid colors, blood-red bulls, golden-yellow landscapes, the stark white skin of female participants all carried symbolic meaning. Scholars note that women dominate the frescoes, often appearing as both leapers and handlers, suggesting priestesses played a central role. The bulls themselves may have represented the divine, perhaps linked to the storm god later worshipped as Zeus. Some fresco fragments even show altars and double-axe symbols near the scenes, hinting these performances were offerings to powers beyond the arena. The logistics behind the frescoes are just as fascinating as their symbolism. Minoan artists worked with wet plaster, blending pigments from crushed minerals like malachite for green and cinnabar for red. They painted rapidly before the plaster dried, a technique called fresco buono that locked colors in for millennia. But the real masterstroke was perspective figures overlapped naturally, and the bulls often appear in flying gallop pose, all four legs extended mid-leap, a convention so accurate it wouldn't resurface in art until Renaissance paintings of racehorses. Yet for all their vibrancy, these frescoes nearly vanished twice over. When Knossos was destroyed around 1400 BCE, whether by earthquake, invasion, or revolt, the walls crumbled, burying the paintings in rubble. Then, when Sir Arthur Evans excavated them in the early 20th century, his restorations sometimes blurred the line between original and reconstruction. Modern digital scans now reveal ghostly outlines of earlier designs beneath the visible layers, suggesting the bull leaping scenes were repainted multiple times, each iteration refining the ritual's portrayal. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't how they painted these scenes, but why they stopped. As Mycenaean influence grew, bull leaping faded from art, replaced by scenes of warfare. The last known fresco from a later period shows a lone bull with no leapers, a silent testament to a vanishing tradition. Today, these fragments endure as more than art. They're windows into a world where humanity didn't just survive nature's fury, but turned it into something beautiful, fleeting, and utterly unforgettable. Buried in a peat bog for over 3,000 years, the Nordic sun chariot emerged from the earth as if frozen in mid-journey, its gleaming bronze curves still capturing the very essence of celestial motion. Discovered in 1902 by farmers cutting peat in Trondheim, Denmark, this intricate artifact isn't just a model chariot. It's a Bronze Age hymn to the sun, crafted with such symbolic precision that it feels less like an object and more like a prayer cast in metal. About the size of a dinner tray, the chariot consists of a gilded sun disk balanced on 6-spoked wheels, pulled by a single horse so stylized it seems to gallop through myth itself. Every detail whispers of a people who didn't just observe the cosmos but sought to harness its rhythms in bronze and gold. The genius of the design lies in its duality. One side of the sun disk glitters with thin layers of gold leaf, representing the daytime sun's radiant journey across the sky. The other side, left bare in bronze, embodies the sun's nocturnal voyage through the underworld, a belief central to Nordic mythology long before the Vikings put it into sagas. This wasn't mere decoration, it was a cosmological map meant to be rotated as it was pulled, perhaps during rituals to ensure the sun's rebirth each dawn. The horse, with its elongated neck and exaggerated hooves, mirrors later Norse depictions of Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged steed, hinting at mythological roots stretching back millennia. Archaeologists still debate its exact purpose. Some argue it was a ceremonial object, paraded during solstice celebrations to guarantee the sun's return after winter's darkness. Others suggest it served as an educational tool, a visual aid for storytellers explaining the sun's perilous daily cycle to wide-eyed listeners, the most tantalizing theory. That it was a votive offering deliberately sunk into the bog as a gift to the gods, a practice common in Bronze Age Scandinavia, where water was seen as a gateway to the divine. What's undeniable is the sophistication behind its construction. The chariot's axles are engineered to allow smooth rotation, while the disk's gold foil was pressed so thin, modern metallurgists estimate it required hammering nuggets into sheets barely thicker than a human hair. This level of craftsmanship suggests a specialized workshop, possibly one serving a priestly elite who controlled such sacred objects. Yet unlike the grand solar monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, this was a portable cosmos, small enough to hold in your hands but vast enough to contain an entire worldview. The sun chariot's isolation is what haunts historians. No other artifacts like it have been found, leaving us to wonder how widespread this solar cult truly was. Was it the treasure of a lone visionary or part of a broader tradition lost to time? Today, it stands as both a masterpiece and a mystery, a reminder that even in the misty north, Bronze Age minds were mapping the heavens not with telescopes but with fire, faith, and the unshakable certainty that the sun's journey was theirs to guide. Deep in the tombs of China's Zhou dynasty, archaeologists unearthed a symphony frozen in bronze, a chorus of bells so precisely tuned they could play entire musical scales with the strike of a mallet. These weren't just noisemakers, they were technological marvels, their curves and thicknesses calculated to produce distinct pitches with breathtaking accuracy. Picture a set of 65 bells, each one cast from an alloy so consistent, modern metallurgists still can't replicate it without computer modeling, arranged in rows according to pitch like a 3,000-year-old xylophone. This was the Bianzhong of Marquis of Zheng, a musical treasure buried for eternity yet so advanced it still rings true today. What makes these bells extraordinary isn't just their sound, it's the physics behind their design. Unlike European bells that produce a single dominant tone, Chinese craftsmen engineered dual-tone bells with a revolutionary hourglass shape. Strike the center and you'd hear one pitch, strike near the rim and a second perfectly harmonious note would resonate. This wasn't accidental. By adjusting the thickness of the bronze at precise points, artisans essentially tuned each bell like a modern piano string, allowing a single instrument to span multiple notes. The largest bells could thunder like a monsoon, while the smallest shimmered with the clarity of struck crystal, a range that enabled everything from solemn ritual music to complex ceremonial compositions. But the real magic lay in their ritual role. These bells weren't played in isolation. They anchored entire orchestras of stone chimes, silk-stringed zithers, and bamboo flutes during ancestral sacrifices. Inscriptions on the marquee's bells reveal their sacred purpose: to summon the noble spirits and harmonize the state. Imagine a ceremony where every note was believed to vibrate in sync with the cosmos, where musicians followed notation systems etched into bamboo slips, some of the world's oldest surviving sheet music. The bell's very placement mirrored celestial patterns, with deeper tones representing Earth and higher ones echoing the heavens. The casting process itself bordered on alchemy. Using the piece mold technique, a method unique to Chinese bronze work, artisans poured molten metal into clay molds lined with organic fibers, creating microscopic channels that dampened unwanted overtones. Some bells even contained trace amounts of lead, strategically added to alter resonance. The result: instruments so stable they stayed in tune for centuries, surviving earthquakes, wars, and the slow creep of corrosion. Yet by the Han Dynasty, this brilliance faded. The rise of Confucianism shifted focus from grand rituals to scholarly pursuits, and the bell's complex harmonies slipped into silence. Today, they're more than artifacts. They're time machines, letting us hear the past not as we imagine it, but as it truly sounded, a testament to a civilization that didn't just invent music, but engineered it down to the atomic level. Buried beneath the ruins of Hattusa, the Hittite capital, lies a weapon that changed the course of history, a dagger so revolutionary, its very existence was once a state secret. This wasn't just any blade, it was forged from iron, a metal so coveted in the Bronze Age that the Hittites guarded its production like nuclear codes. Unlike the gleaming bronze swords of their rivals, this dagger was darker, deadlier, and frighteningly advanced, a glimpse into a technological arms race that would redefine power in the ancient world. The genius of Hittite ironwork wasn't just in the material itself, but in how they mastered it. While other cultures occasionally stumbled upon meteoric iron, a rare, naturally occurring metal, the Hittites cracked the secret of smelting iron ore from the earth. Their process, refined in charcoal-fired furnaces reaching temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, removed impurities and infused the metal with carbon, creating a proto-steel far stronger than bronze. The result, blades that held their edge through battle after battle, armor that could turn aside slashing strikes, and tools that didn't shatter under stress. A single Hittite iron dagger, like the one found in the royal tombs of Uluburun, could outlast a dozen bronze weapons, its jagged metallurgical grain visible under magnification like a fingerprint of innovation. But the Hittites didn't just perfect iron, they weaponized secrecy. Cuneiform tablets from their archives revealed draconian laws punishing anyone who leaked smelting techniques to outsiders. Traders caught smuggling iron ore faced execution, and captive blacksmiths were kept under armed guard. Kings boasted of iron's divine origins, claiming the god Teshub himself bestowed the knowledge, a myth designed to deter spies. This wasn't paranoia, it was geopolitical strategy. When the Hittite king Anata wrote to a rival ruler, he flaunted an iron throne as a flex of technological supremacy, the Bronze Age equivalent of unveiling a stealth fighter. The dagger's design tells its own story of battlefield evolution. Unlike the leaf-shaped bronze blades common in the Mediterranean, Hittite iron daggers had a narrower profile, with a reinforced midrib and a tapered point optimized for piercing armor. Some featured hilts wrapped in leather or bound with silver wire, a nod to their status as elite weapons. Archaeologists have found examples buried with warriors, their blades still resting against ribs, silent witnesses to close-quarters combat where iron's durability meant the difference between life and death. Yet for all their ingenuity, the Hittites' monopoly couldn't last forever. When their empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, dispersed blacksmiths carried fragments of their knowledge westward, where it would eventually ignite the Iron Age. Today, these daggers are more than relics, they're metaphors for how technology, no matter how closely guarded, always escapes its cage. The Hittites' iron secrets may have slipped through their fingers, but their legacy cuts deep, etched into the very metal that shaped the modern world. In the shadowy recesses of Minoan temple complexes, clutched in the hands of long-vanished worshippers, the snake goddess figurines stand as one of the Bronze Age's most hypnotic mysteries. These ceramic and faience statuettes, some barely taller than a finger, others nearly life-size, depict women with bare breasts, flaring skirts, and serpents coiled around their arms like living jewelry, their expressions caught between serenity and divine intensity. The most famous, unearthed at Knossos in 1903, grips two writhing snakes while a feline perches on her headdress, as if channeling the raw power of earth and beast into a single sacred moment. But were these icons of a mother goddess, symbols of priestly authority, or something far more unsettling? Look beyond the initial shock of the serpents, and you'll notice details that whisper of a culture comfortable with paradox. The figurines' layered skirts flare outward in concentric rings, mirroring the architecture of Minoan palaces with their labyrinthine corridors, perhaps a visual pun linking women's bodies to the sacred landscape. Their exposed breasts aren't eroticized but ritualized, echoing contemporary Egyptian depictions of Hathor nursing pharaohs, suggesting a shared Mediterranean vocabulary of divine nurture. Even the snakes, so often symbols of danger elsewhere, seem domesticated here, their sinuous forms harmonizing with the figure's curves. This wasn't just art, it was theology in 3 dimensions. Theories about their purpose spiral as intricately as the serpents they hold. Some scholars argue they represent a chthonic earth goddess, with snakes embodying rebirth due to their shedding skin, a precursor to later Greek deities like Persephone. Others point to their discovery near altars and storage jars, suggesting they guarded grain stores against rodents, blending practical and spiritual roles. The most tantalizing hypothesis comes from their postures. Many stand with one arm outstretched, the other pressed to the waist, identical to gestures made by modern Cretan folk dancers during sacred festivals. Were these figurines frozen mid-ritual, capturing a moment of ecstatic communion? Yet the true revolution lies in their craftsmanship. The finest examples, like the glazed faience goddess from the temple repositories, showcase techniques borrowed from Egypt but pushed to new heights. Artisans mixed crushed quartz with plant ash to create a self-glazing ceramic that shimmered like water under sunlight, a technological marvel requiring kiln temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. Traces of cinnabar paint still cling to some, their lips and nipples once blazing scarlet, while gold leaf fragments hint at ornaments lost to time. This wasn't folk art, it was the Bronze Age equivalent of Vatican-grade religious iconography. What chills the spine is how abruptly their tradition ends. Later Mycenaean adaptations stiffen into formalism, losing the Minoan's fluid grace. By the time Homer sang of Olympian gods, these snake-wielding figures had faded into half-remembered myth, surviving only in distorted echoes like Athena's association with serpents. Today, they challenge our assumptions about ancient spirituality, not as primitive idolatry, but as a sophisticated language of symbols where women held snakes as casually as modern priests might hold chalices, and divinity slithered close enough to touch. Before the first cities rose along the Tigris and Euphrates, before scribes pressed cuneiform into clay tablets, a humble invention was quietly transforming humanity's relationship with the earth: the Mesopotamian plow. Unlike the simple digging sticks used for millennia, this wasn't just a tool. It was a force multiplier, cracking open the sun-baked soil of the Fertile Crescent with efficiency that fed empires. Picture a farmer in 3000 BCE, gripping handles carved from seasoned oak as a team of oxen drags a curved wooden blade through the earth, turning what was once back-breaking labor into rhythmic, almost meditative work. The difference was staggering. Where a farmer with a hand hoe might till an acre in weeks, the plow could do it in days, freeing hands and minds for the crafts, governance, and arts that would define civilization itself. What made this plow revolutionary wasn't just its design, but its adaptability. Early versions, like the Ard, featured a symmetrical share that gouged furrows without flipping soil, perfect for the region's loose alluvial plains. But as Mesopotamian farmers pushed into harder soils, they refined it, adding a metal-tipped blade here, an asymmetrical share there, even experimenting with seed funnels that dropped grain directly into the freshly cut rows. By 2500 BCE, some plows had evolved into complex machines, with adjustable depth controls and stone counterweights to stabilize the blade. Cuneiform tablets from boast of workshops producing plows in standardized sizes, an ancient assembly line for agriculture. The societal ripple effects were profound. With surplus grain came specialization: potters, weavers, and scribes no longer needed to farm to eat. Temples amassed harvests as tithes, transforming into economic powerhouses. Even warfare shifted. City-states now fought not just for glory, but for the fertile lands that plows made invaluable. One Sumerian proverb captures this starkly: "You can have a king, you can have a lord, but the true ruler is the man with the plow." Yet the plow's legacy is bittersweet. Intensive tilling eroded Mesopotamia's once rich soils, and irrigation canals left behind salt deposits that turned fields barren, a cautionary tale of innovation's unintended consequences. By the time Rome rose, the very tool that built civilization had contributed to its cradle's decline. Today, as archaeologists unearth plowshares buried in ancient silt, they're not just studying a tool, but the double-edged sword of progress itself. In the dim glow of an oil lamp, a Mycenaean artisan hammers a sheet of gold thinner than a leaf, shaping it over a nobleman's lifeless face, a final portrait not carved in stone but pressed in precious metal. These gold death masks, discovered in the royal graves of Mycenae by Heinrich Schliemann in 1876, are among the most haunting relics of the Bronze Age. The so-called Mask of Agamemnon, with its staring eyes and stylized beard, became instantly famous, though we now know it predates the legendary Trojan War hero by at least 300 years. What's remarkable isn't just their artistry, but what they reveal about a society where death wasn't an end, but a transformation, and where gold wasn't just wealth but a passport to eternity. Every mask tells a story through its craftsmanship. Some, like the solemn, almost childlike mask from grave Roman IV, feature soft, rounded features with closed eyes, suggesting serene repose. Others, like the more angular mask from grave V, exaggerate facial details, thick eyebrows, a prominent nose, to project authority even in death. The Mask of Agamemnon stands apart with its intricate details, individually hammered curls framing the forehead, a finely chased mustache, and ears so carefully rendered you can almost imagine them catching whispers from the underworld. Metallurgical analysis reveals these weren't generic templates, but custom-made for specific individuals, the gold alloyed with silver for durability and a warmer hue. But why gold to the Mycenaeans? Its incorruptibility mirrored the soul's journey. Unlike flesh, it never tarnished. The masks were just one part of an elaborate funerary ritual. Excavations show the deceased were often laid on beds of gold foil, surrounded by diadems, breastplates, and even gold sandals, as if dressing for an otherworldly court. One grave contained a mask with tiny holes around the edges, suggesting it was once stitched to a shroud, the threads long since vanished. This wasn't mere ostentation, it was a spiritual wardrobe equipping the dead for whatever lay beyond. The masks also hint at a society obsessed with legacy. Unlike the anonymous burials of earlier eras, these were portraits meant to preserve identity across millennia. Some scholars argue the exaggerated features, the wide eyes, the grimacing mouths reflect a belief that the dead needed to be recognizable not just to humans but to gods or ancestral spirits. The mask's uniformity in elite graves suggests a ruling class keen to project continuity, as if each king's death mask consciously echoed his predecessors, reinforcing dynastic power even in the grave. Yet the most poignant detail lies in what's missing. None of the masks show signs of wear, no creases from folding, no repairs. These weren't heirlooms passed down, but creations meant for a single, sacred purpose. When the funeral pyres cooled and the tombs were sealed, the masks began their true work, staring into the darkness, waiting for a dawn their wearers would never see, but which their civilization would carry forward, one golden face at a time. Among the cargo of sunken Bronze Age ships and the dusty shelves of museum storerooms, few artifacts capture the wandering spirit of Mediterranean trade like Cypriot base ring ware. These elegant pottery vessels, with their distinctive carinated shapes and lustrous metallic sheen, weren't just containers, they were cultural passports, circulating from the bustling ports of Cyprus to the palaces of Egypt, the tombs of Canaan, and even the far-flung shores of Sardinia. Picture a jug so finely crafted its walls are barely thicker than an eggshell, its surface rippling with concentric grooves that catch the light like hammered bronze. This was pottery designed to dazzle, its very form announcing the sophistication of its makers. What set base ring ware apart wasn't just aesthetics, it was chemistry. Cypriot potters sourced clay rich in iron oxide, then fired it in oxygen-starved kilns to create a striking black or reddish-brown hue. But the real magic happened in the finishing. By burnishing the surface with smooth stones before firing, they achieved a glaze-like shine without actual glaze, a technique that made these vessels gleam like polished metal. Some were even decorated with delicate white painted patterns, zigzags, spirals, or stylized birds echoing motifs found in Minoan frescoes and Hittite seals. This wasn't just utilitarian crockery, it was portable art whispering of connections across the sea. The distribution of these vessels reads like a map of Bronze Age globalization. Archaeologists have unearthed them in Pharaoh Thutmose Roman III palace in Thebes, stuffed with imported resins, in Ugarit's merchant quarters, stacked beside cuneiform invoices, and in Mycenaean burial shafts repurposed as funerary urns. Their shapes evolved to suit local tastes: tall, slender jugs for pouring precious oils in Egypt, squat jars with strainer spouts for sieving wine in Syria. Yet wherever they traveled, their Cypriot origin was unmistakable. Chemical fingerprinting traces their clay to specific hills near the Troodos Mountains, where generations of potters perfected their craft. But here's the twist: these pots carried more than liquids. Residue analyses revealed traces of opium in some vessels, suggesting they transported the narcotic across trade routes. A famous jug from Cyprus even bears a ceramic applique of poppy seed pods, an ancient ingredients list for its contents. Other samples held traces of aromatic resins like terebinth, used in perfumes and temple rituals. This dual role, as both artwork and drug conduit, hints at a society where commerce and spirituality intertwined. Imagine a Cypriot merchant haggling over a shipment of these vessels, their contents capable of soothing pain or summoning gods, their very presence a status symbol from Crete to Megiddo. Yet by 1200 BCE, the trade collapsed. As Bronze Age empires crumbled, demand for luxury goods evaporated, and the kilns of Cyprus fell silent. Later Iron Age potters would imitate base ring styles, but the secret of that signature burnish was lost. Today, these vessels are more than relics. They're fragments of a forgotten dialogue between cultures, where a humble jug could carry the taste, touch, and dreams of an entire civilization. Beneath the cracked earth of China's Shang Dynasty royal tombs, archaeologists uncovered something far more valuable than gold: ox shoulder blades and turtle shells etched with cryptic symbols, blackened by fire and time. These were oracle bones, the earliest known form of Chinese writing, but also something far stranger: a direct hotline to the spirit world, where kings sought answers from ancestors through cracks in the bone. Picture a Shang diviner pressing a red-hot bronze rod into a prepared groove on a turtle plastron, the air thick with the scent of scorched keratin as the bone split with an audible pop. In that instant, the shape of the cracks became a celestial telegram, interpreted by scribes who then carved the entire conversation: question, answer, even whether the prediction came true, into the bone itself. This wasn't superstition, it was bureaucracy meeting the divine. What makes these bones revolutionary isn't just their inscriptions, though discovering over 150,000 characters essentially gave us the Rosetta Stone of early Chinese, but their role as historical records. One typical inscription reads, "On the day Xin Yu, the king divined, if we raise an army of 3,000 to attack the Qiang, will we receive victory?" Below it, the verdict: the cracks show auspicious signs, we will indeed conquer. Later, a postscript adds whether the prophecy held true. These weren't vague omens, they were meticulous court transcripts detailing everything from harvest yields to royal toothaches. A single bone might chronicle a lunar eclipse, a queen's childbirth, and the optimal day to sacrifice prisoners, all in elegant, angular script that evolved directly into modern Chinese characters. Spot a Shang glyph for rain, Chinese letter, and you'll recognize its descendant in today's newspapers. The divination process itself was a marvel of ritual engineering. Before heating, bones underwent elaborate prep. Turtle shells were polished until translucent, ox scapulars trimmed to uniform size. Some were even retired after heavy use, like sacred notepads filled with divine memos. The questions followed strict formulas, always phrased as if-then propositions, revealing a worldview where the supernatural operated on logic. Kings didn't ask whether to wage war, but when and with how many troops for best results. Even failures were recorded unflinchingly. Cracks say rain tomorrow, reads one, followed by a scribe's addendum. It did not rain, yet the bone's greatest surprise was their metallurgical secret. Recent CT scans revealed that diviners sometimes doped the bone with arsenic or lead, lowering its combustion temperature to produce clearer cracks. This wasn't guesswork, it was early materials science, exploiting chemistry to refine communication with the unseen. Some bones show evidence of reheating, like calling back a deity for clarification, with later inscriptions crammed between earlier ones. By the Zhou dynasty, divination shifted to yarrow stalks and the I Ching, and the bones faded into legend. For 3,000 years, farmers plowed them up, grinding them into dragon bones for folk medicine until scholars recognized their writing in the late 19th century. Today, they're more than artifacts. They're the birth certificates of Chinese civilization, where every stroke of the knife was both prayer and permanent record. In those blackened cracks, we don't just see the origins of writing, we see humanity's endless quest to hold the future still, just long enough to read it. Scattered across the sun-drenched islands of the Aegean, tucked into the corners of ruined homes and buried beneath temple altars, lie thousands of small clay figures frozen in eternal gestures of worship, grief, or simple everyday life. These terracotta figurines, some no larger than a thumb, others standing nearly a foot tall, were the Bronze Age's most intimate artifacts, molding the sacred and mundane into tangible form. Unlike the grandeur of palace frescoes or the lethality of bronze weapons, these humble objects whisper quieter truths about how ordinary people navigated a world brimming with gods, dangers, and the rhythms of survival. Take the famous Psi-type figurines from Mycenaean Greece, named for their resemblance to the Greek letter Psi arms raised skyward in a V shape, their pinched faces staring blankly forward. At first glance, they seem crude, almost childlike in their simplicity, but their very uniformity speaks volumes. Found in homes, graves, and shrines across the Aegean, these figures weren't unique artworks but mass-produced comfort objects, their identical postures suggesting standardized religious gestures. A woman might place one on her household altar to guard against childbirth complications, while a farmer buried another in his field to plead for rain. Their hollow bodies, quick-fired in local kilns, made them affordable to all, democratizing divine connection in a way gold-laden temple offerings never could. Yet the true genius of these figurines lay in their adaptability. On Crete, Minoan artisans crafted voluptuous snake goddesses with intricate flounced skirts, their bare breasts symbolizing fertility. Cycladic sculptors preferred abstract violin-shaped figures, their smooth plains echoing the island's stark landscapes, and in Troy, potters molded lively animal figurines, bulls, deer, and birds, often with movable heads or wheels, suggesting they were children's toys as much as ritual objects. This diversity wasn't accidental. Clay was a living medium, reshaped to reflect local beliefs, needs, and even humor. One irreverent example from Thera shows a grinning man riding a dolphin, his face frozen in mid-laugh, proof that not every figurine took itself seriously. Archaeologists have uncovered these clay companions in startling contexts. Some clutch tiny vessels, eternally offering libations to the dead. Others wear traces of paint, ochre red for life, Egyptian blue for protection, their pigments still clinging after millennia. A poignant cache from Key depicts a circle of women dancing, their hands joined in a ritual that might have accompanied harvest festivals or funerals. But perhaps most haunting are the Kylix riders, figures perched precariously on clay cups. Found shattered in burial sites, they likely symbolize the soul's journey to the afterlife, their fragile forms meant to break and release the spirit within. What's often overlooked is how these figurines bridged social divides. While gold jewelry and bronze armor declared elite status, terracotta was the people's medium. A fisherman's wife and a palace scribe might own nearly identical goddess figurines, their shared faith transcending class. Some show signs of repair, cracks filled with resin, chipped limbs painstakingly reattached, hinting at personal attachments stronger than their cheap materials would suggest. These weren't disposable trinkets but beloved companions through life's triumphs and terrors. Yet by the Iron Age, the tradition faded. As Greek art embraced realism, these stylized figures became curiosities, then ghosts. Today, they're more than artifacts. They're keys to unlocking the emotional world of the Bronze Age, where joy, fear, and hope could be held in the palm of your hand, shaped from earth and fired in the same kilns that baked daily bread. In their silent gestures, we glimpse a humanity instantly familiar, reaching for the divine, comforting the grieving, or simply capturing a moment of play, one pinch of clay at a time. The shimmering blue scarabs and lotus-shaped amulets buried with Egyptian nobles weren't crafted from lapis lazuli or turquoise. They were masterpieces of deception, born from the kilns of artisans who turned humble sand into radiant jewels. This was Egyptian faience, one of history's earliest engineered materials, a glazed ceramic so dazzling it fooled even the most discerning eyes into believing it was precious stone. Unlike ordinary clay pottery, faience was alchemy in action, a mixture of crushed quartz, alkaline salts, and mineral pigments transformed through heat into objects that caught the light like desert mirages. What set faience apart wasn't just its beauty, it was the science behind its glow. When fired, the quartz and alkali mixture underwent a chemical reaction called efflorescence glazing. As water evaporated, dissolved salts migrated to the surface, forming a natural glass-like coating that required no added glaze. The result, a self-glazing ceramic with a lustrous finish in hues ranging from cobalt blue to emerald green, depending on the minerals added: copper for turquoise tones, manganese for deep purples, iron for earthy reds. Archaeologists have found faience beads with colors so vibrant they still gleam after 3,000 years in the ground, but this wasn't just about aesthetics. Faience served a sacred purpose in Egyptian cosmology. Its shimmering surface symbolized the primordial waters of Nun, the chaotic void from which creation emerged. Scarabs, often molded from faience, weren't merely decorative. They were magical talismans placed over the heart in mummification rituals, inscribed with spells to guide the deceased past underworld judges. Even the material's fragility held meaning. Like the cycle of death and rebirth, faience could be crushed and refired into new forms, echoing the eternal regeneration of the soul. The production process reveals staggering ingenuity. Artisans shaped the quartz paste around perishable cores, bundles of straw or reeds, that burned away during firing, leaving hollow amulets lightweight enough to adorn wigs and linen robes. Some workshops near Thebes developed frit, a variant mixed with ground glass, achieving translucent effects that mimicked rock crystal. A single necklace might combine dozens of techniques: molded amulets, hand-painted hieroglyphs, and beads so tiny they resembled droplets of celestial water. Yet faïence's true brilliance lies in its democratization of splendor. While gold was reserved for pharaohs, faience jewelry graced merchants, dancers, and even children. Excavations at Amarna uncovered crudely shaped faience rings in workers' quarters, proof that anyone could possess a fragment of the divine. By the Roman era, the recipe faded, replaced by blown glass. Today, these forgotten jewels remind us that the ancient world's most enduring treasures weren't just mined from the earth, they were dreamed into being by hands that understood magic, lives in transformation. Rolling across the wet clay of ancient Mesopotamia, no bigger than a thumb, the cylinder seal was the Bronze Age's ultimate multi-tool: part signature, part security system, and portable art gallery all in one. These tiny engraved stone cylinders, when pressed into soft clay, left behind intricate raised designs that functioned like a king's wax seal or a modern barcode. But their purpose went far beyond authentication. Imagine a merchant in Ur finalizing a deal for 500 jars of olive oil. Instead of signing his name, he'd reach for his personal cylinder seal, perhaps carved from lapis lazuli or hematite, roll it across the tablet surface, and instantly imprint a scene of gods, animals, or geometric patterns unique to him. This wasn't just bureaucratic efficiency, it was identity etched in stone. What made these seals revolutionary was their dual nature. On one level, they were practical administrative tools. Temple archives overflowed with clay tablets stamped by seals, tracking everything from tax payments to slave trades. A single cylinder could mark jars of grain, clay envelopes containing contracts, or even door locks, any tampering would distort the imprint, alerting officials to foul play. But look closer at the designs and you'll spot a universe of symbolism. A seal belonging to a priest might show a worshipper led before a deity by a goddess with flowing water robes, while a merchant's seal could depict boats laden with goods under a crescent moon. These weren't random images, they were visual resumes broadcasting the owner's profession, divine patronage, or social rank in a single twist of the wrist. The craftsmanship behind these miniature masterpieces defies belief. Using copper drills and abrasive sands, artisans carved mirror image designs into the hardest stones. Often working under magnification, archaeologists have found seals with details as fine as half a millimeter. Some feature narrative scenes that unfold like comic strips when rolled. A hero battling a lion, a banquet progressing from cup raising to music playing. The most sophisticated, like the seal of Queen Puabi of Ur, even incorporate cuneiform inscriptions, blending text and image seamlessly. Yet the true genius of cylinder seals lay in their universality. Unlike written scripts understood only by scribes, these images crossed language barriers. A Hittite trader could recognize a Babylonian seal's authority based on its artistry alone. Over time, seals evolved into cultural mashups. Akkadian seals borrowed Sumerian motifs, while Assyrian designs fused with Egyptian styles. They became so integral to daily life that people wore them as pendants, transforming utilitarian objects into status symbols. Their legacy, however, is bittersweet. As cuneiform gave way to alphabets and clay to parchment, the rolling signature faded into obscurity. Yet in those tiny, intricate grooves, we glimpse the birth of personal branding, proof that even 4,000 years ago, humanity understood the power of a mark that says unmistakably, "This is mine." In the bustling marketplaces of the Indus Valley, where copper from Oman met lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and cotton from Gujarat, commerce didn't rely on guesswork. It ran on precision-cut cubes of chert and agate. The Harappan standardized weights, unearthed by archaeologists across dozens of ancient cities, weren't just tools for trade. They were the bedrock of history's first globalized economy, a system so consistent it puts modern metrics to shame. Picture a merchant in Mohenjo-Daro placing a dozen identical stone cubes on a balanced scale, each one polished to exacting dimensions, their edges sharp enough to catch the sunlight, their values calibrated across a civilization spanning 1,000,000 square kilometers. This wasn't just convenience, it was a revolution in trust where a weight in Lothal matched one in Harappa over 800 miles away, down to a margin of error smaller than a pea. What made these weights extraordinary was their mathematical elegance. The Harappans didn't just eyeball measurements, they engineered a base unit of approximately 13.6 grams, then multiplied it in perfect ratios, doubles, quadruples, and decimal multiples up to 10,000 times that weight. The most common cubes, weighing around 27.2 grams, fit neatly into a duodecimal system, divisible by 4 for smaller transactions. Archaeologists have found them in sets, nested like Russian dolls, from tiny 1/64th units to massive 16-kilogram monoliths, suggesting a society that traded everything from spices to livestock with the same meticulous care. Unlike the erratic stone weights of contemporary Mesopotamia or Egypt, Harappan measures stayed unnervingly consistent for nearly 700 years, a testament to centralized quality control that would make modern ISO certifiers blush. But the real genius lay in their universality. These weights weren't confined to elite marketplaces. They appeared in village workshops and dockside warehouses alike. A fisherman selling dried sardines in Dolavera used the same system as a jeweler crafting gold beads in Chanudaro. Chemical analysis reveals something even more startling. The stones were sourced from quarries hundreds of miles apart, yet finished to identical standards. Some bear microscopic striations from verification, scratches likely inspections by trade guilds or officials, ensuring no one shaved edges to cheat. This was a culture that baked fairness into its very bones, where a merchant from the coast could trade with a mountain miner without haggling over measures. The weight shapes whispered of deeper symbolism. Cubes dominated for dry goods, while spheres and cylinders measured liquids like sesame oil or honey, their forms preventing confusion. Intriguingly, the smallest weight, some just 0.8 grams, align with the mass of early Harappan silver coins, hinting at a proto-monetary system. Others match the weight of specific commodities. One standard unit equals 500 Harappan wheat grains, suggesting a tangible link between abstract numbers and daily sustenance. Yet by 1800 BCE, this precision crumbled. As the Indus cities declined, weights devolved into regional variants, their uniformity shattered like the civilization that birthed them. Later cultures, from the Vedic people to the Mauryaans, would reinvent measurement systems from scratch, unaware of the sophistication buried beneath their feet. Today, these silent stone cubes challenge our assumptions about ancient commerce, not as a haphazard barter system, but as a network of trust as precise as a laser-cut diamond, where every transaction, from a farmer's millet to a king's tribute, hinged on a shared language of weight and worth. In their unyielding geometry, we see the ghost of a world that valued fairness enough to carve it in stone. Rising from the misty bogs of Scandinavia like echoes from a forgotten melody, the Nordic Bronze Age lures were no ordinary horns. They were towering bronze instruments, some stretching over 6 feet long, their sinuous curves ending in ornate discs that caught the sunlight like ancient megaphones. Discovered mostly in pairs and often deliberately deposited in wetlands or graves, these weren't just musical tools. They were sonic conduits between the earthly and the divine, capable of producing deep, resonant tones that could carry for miles across open landscapes. Picture two musicians standing back to back, their lures curving outward like the horns of some colossal beast, their synchronized notes vibrating through the air in harmonies so precise, modern acousticians still struggle to replicate their eerie perfection. What sets the lures apart is their otherworldly craftsmanship. Cast in bronze using the lost wax method, each horn consists of several detachable sections, meticulously fitted together with flared mouths and handles shaped like stylized animals or cosmic symbols. The longest known lure, found in Brudevelt, Denmark, weighs nearly 13 pounds and produces a haunting low C note when played, a tone so powerful experimental archaeologists have suggested it could have been used to coordinate ceremonies across vast distances. Tests show their unique S-shape wasn't just aesthetic, it amplified specific frequencies, creating a sound described as a bull's bellow mixed with a whale's song, capable of cutting through wind and rain with spine-tingling clarity. But these weren't mere noisemakers. The lure's ritual significance is etched into their very discovery contexts. Many were found near sacrificial sites, often alongside weapons or ceremonial cauldrons, suggesting they played a role in rites honoring gods like Freyja or Njörður, deities linked to fertility and the sea. Some scholars argue their paired deposition reflects a cosmological duality, like the Norse concept of Ginnungagap, the primordial void between opposing forces. Even their playing technique hints at sacred theatre. Surviving Scandinavian rock carvings depict lure blowers in procession, their instruments raised skyward as if summoning storms or blessing crops. The most tantalizing theory, though, revolves around their possible use as communication tools. Fragments of lures have been found along ancient travel routes, and their acoustic range aligns with known Bronze Age trade networks. Imagine a chain of signalers spaced across fjords or hilltops, relaying warnings or announcements through coded sequences of notes, a Bronze Age precursor to the Alpine horn or even maritime fog signals. Yet, unlike later instruments, the lures abruptly vanish from the archaeological record by 500 BCE, their secrets swallowed by the same bogs that preserved them. Today, replicas played at Scandinavian festivals offer glimpses of their lost power, but the originals remain enigmatic. Were they Bronze Age sirens calling souls to the afterlife? Territorial markers audible across tribal lands, or perhaps the very voice of the northern sky itself, frozen in metal and waiting even now to sound again. The Bronze Age wasn't just a chapter in history, it was a blazing crucible of innovation, where cultures across continents independently engineered solutions so brilliant they still leave us speechless. From the celestial computers of Greece to the hydraulic dockyards of India, from the iron daggers of the Hittites to the sonic sorcery of Nordic lures, this era proves that ingenuity isn't bound by time or geography. These weren't primitive prototypes, they were revolutions in metal, stone, and clay that laid the groundwork for everything from modern plumbing to global trade networks. Think about it, the Minoans had flush toilets while much of medieval Europe tossed waste into streets. The Harappans standardized weights with precision rivaling today's metric system. The Shang dynasty's bronze bells could play intricate musical scales millennia before Beethoven. This wasn't just progress, it was a dozen different civilizations racing toward the future, each in their own extraordinary way. What's heartbreaking and exhilarating is how much we've lost. The Antikythera Mechanism and the Phaistos Disc weren't flukes. They were glimpses of a world where knowledge flowed freely until war, disaster, or simple neglect severed the thread. Imagine the libraries of Alexandria, but multiplied across continents and buried deeper by time. The Baghdad Battery hints at experiments with electricity we can barely reconstruct. The Nebra Sky Disk suggests astronomical networks we're only beginning to map, and these are just the inventions that survived. How many more vanished without a trace? What medicines, what machines, what entire sciences crumbled to dust when the Bronze Age collapsed? Yet every shard of pottery, every corroded gear, whispers the same thrilling possibility. We've only scratched the surface. For every Uluburun shipwreck hauled from the depths, there are surely 100 more laden with unknown marvels. New excavations in Central Asia are uncovering metallurgical techniques that defy explanation. Underwater drones are revealing sunken cities where whole chapters of technology may lie preserved. The past isn't done surprising us. So here's the real question. If we've underestimated the Bronze Age this profoundly, what else might be out there? Could some farmer's field hide a lost alloy stronger than steel? Might a cave somewhere shelter schematics for a machine we've yet to reinvent? History isn't a straight line, it's a branching maze of dead ends and rediscoveries, and we're still tracing its path. The next time you flip a light switch or check the weather on your phone, remember, you're standing on the shoulders of inventors who walked this earth 4,000 years ago, whose names we'll never know, but whose brilliance echoes in every modern convenience. Now it's your turn. Which of these forgotten inventions stunned you the most? What mysteries do you think are still waiting beneath the dirt or the waves? Drop your thoughts below, because the conversation about our past is how we shape the future. And who knows, maybe one of you will be the one to uncover the next great Bronze Age secret.